Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have Katie from Northeast Ohio, and she wanted to share some of her strange experiences that have been taking place on her property. Katie has noticed her dogs acting funny whenever they are outside, and she has heard some wood knocks while letting them out. It could be possible the Sasquatch are hunting the dogs and they want to eradicate the alarm system per se, or they befriended the dogs and became buddies with them. Katie is down to earth and she has a scientific outlook on the phenomenon. If you enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright, with all that being said, let's dive into this next interview from Northeast Ohio. All right, Katie, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for asking. Katie, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Okay, I am a single parent. I live alone in a large house in Northeast Ohio. I came from the Pacific Northwest, and earlier I had been trained in purely scientific university studies. I was a total non-believer of Bigfoot or dog man, or I had to look up what cryptid even meant just a little bit ago. So my thoughts and my approach to all of this changed last year in the middle of summer when I started taking my one dog out front to let him go potty, and I would notice a smell. It was a not at all a bad smell. It smelled similar to mild skunk and what I could only identify as burning marijuana leaves. So I chalked it up to a neighbor next to my neighbor and didn't think more about it. So I would stand on my porch smelling this, and my dog would be out doing his business, and I would hear little sounds along the edge of the porch that I couldn't figure out why it was happening, other than maybe it's a mouse or a meadow vole. And then I'd bring them in, and that was it. And as nights went on, the smell seemed to become more intense. And it kind of culminated in an event where I took my dog out. He's a border collie. And I'm a previous canine handler, so I'm very attuned to dogs' body language. I took him out. I stood on the porch. I noticed the smell. And as soon as I shut the door, I heard two sharp wood knocks on a tree that's next to, it's about 20 feet away from my door. And it was unmistakable as wood on wood, but was also very strange. There was no wind. I could not figure out what was making that noise, so I shrugged it off, like I think anybody would. I took a few more steps towards the stairs that go down from my porch to my walkway, and I heard another two sharp racks of, or sounds of wood hitting wood, louder this time. And that definitely caught my attention as, okay, this is different. Can't shrug it off. I know there are no branches hanging down. That's my tree. I know that tree. And So I kind of turned my attention towards my dog, who was doing something strange. He was doing kind of like crazy eight patterns, real tight circles in the front yard, halfway between myself and that tree. He wasn't growling, barking. His body language wasn't aggressive or fearful. It was confused. And he was constantly looking at me. Um, he wasn't making any noise at all. And so I took one more step onto the first step down from my porch. And I had the last two knocks happen, very loud and much more urgent sounding. And at that point, I became frightened. And it wasn't because of, although a Bigfoot did cross my mind, I was actually not afraid of that. There are only two things I'm afraid of in this world: mountain lions and people. But so I wondered if that was a person making that noise. And that actually startled me and concerned me more than anything else. I called my dog in. We went inside. I told my daughter, who was inside the whole time, that, what happened. And I opened up the windows, and I could smell that skunky smell still out there. Um, so I ignored it. I didn't know what else to do. I wasn't going to go out. Oh, one thing I did do before I went into the house, I took a flashlight and shined it up and down the tree real quick, thinking I might see eye shine, and there was nothing. So at any rate, the next morning, I took my dog out for the usual morning business. And he usually goes pee first, but this time, and for the next two mornings, he went directly to that tree, something he hasn't ever done before. And as he approached the tree, he would go slower and slower, and he started sniffing intently, and his nose would slowly climb up the bark, where I imagined somebody could hide if they were wanting to do so. So I went over there, seeing as it was daylight, and I wanted to see if there was some kind of piece of wood or something that a person would make that noise with, and there was nothing. Oh, I do know that I forgot to tell you something about the smack on the house.
Hmm.
Can I say that now, or do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It was before this event, maybe a week before. I have the two dogs. They were sleeping under my bed. It was around 11:30 at night. I turned off the TV and was settling in to go to sleep, and there was the loudest smack outside of my house, directly opposed to where my head was resting. It it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before or since. It sounded like a big giant's hand smacking it open-handed. I didn't hear anything fall, like, say, maybe an owl flew into the house. There was nothing like that. Both dogs jumped out from under my bed and ran halfway down the hall before they stopped. And oddly, I wasn't afraid. I figured whatever it was, it'll be there in the morning. I'm not going out there now. And I went right to sleep. So there was that event. Now back to the porch event. The next night, I was up in my bedroom, second story up. This bedroom window faces the street, and keeping in mind what I had experienced the evening before, I opened up the curtains to a night sky. I saw two shining circular lights down at I have a garden bed by the sidewalk. So I thought that my very first impression was, is that a raccoon? Eye shine from a possum? Couldn't make sense out of it. So I kept staring, and then I realized that those are two orbs. Like, I'm using the word orb now, but at that time I thought just two balls of light. And I just started staring at them, and I noticed their characteristic, that they have a density in the center. The light doesn't seem to escape from the orb. In other words, it doesn't shine out onto the grass. It stayed within its membrane, maybe, or boundary, but it was strobing and pulsating inside like it had an energy of some sort. One would be bigger than the other. Their sizes were about that of a tennis ball. I had a plastic 4 or 5 inch boundary in that garden, and they came up to it and then actually up and over it as I watched. And that got me a little nervous. And I kind of stared a little bit more intensely, thinking, "Oh no, you're not going to scare me or bum rush my house or anything. I'm just going to keep watching you." And they hovered on the house side of the boundary and then backed up back into the garden bed. And we did this for about 4 minutes or so. And oddly, during this time, I was in this zone where I wasn't aware that I had any kind of, a phone or anything to take a picture or a video of. I wasn't aware of doing that. Never crossed my mind. So I at the end of it, I just kind of got tired of standing there, but there was no way I was going to go outside. I know what I saw out there. It was very real. And it was a night or two after that I saw on one of the channels that there was an association with orbs being seen around a Bigfoot encounter. So, oddly enough, it was the orbs that convinced me that there must be something Bigfootish about what I encountered. It wasn't the event itself on the porch, because I think, like I said before, I was a firm, yeah, I did. I was very scientific in my whole life, and all of the degrees that I got, very scientific. Everything had to be reproducible. So that's all I can remember right now off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. What color were the lights that you saw?
The lights did have a dominant color. They were a gold, I would say, very warm gold. And the colors would get denser towards the center and change to blue and yellow and kind of strobe a little. I know this sounds totally crazy. I'm hearing myself say this and I can't believe it.
No, I've experienced the same thing, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And you said they smacked the side of the house where you were sleeping at. Is that correct?
Well, I did have a smack. I have no idea what did that. There is no evidence. So, of course, the next morning, the first thing I did when I got up, I went outside to see if there was damage. And there was none that I could see. Now, my bedroom is on the second floor, and I thought the next closest thing that I could figure to make that sound would be some person deciding to throw a volleyball, to really throw it hard and hit the side of my house. Ironically, aim it just right so that it would be on the other side of the wall from where my head was. And that just seemed kind of far-fetched. But I didn't see any dead bird, any particles of wood, nothing. I saw no evidence whatsoever. But I definitely heard the loud noise, as did both of my sound asleep dogs.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. It happened like two
Oh,
or three times in my bedroom, and it would happen during the middle of the day. And there's a pretty
oh,
big yard until you get into the woods, and it just sounded like a giant hand slapped the side of the house, or possibly like an owl just ran into the house about 8 feet high.
yeah. I would think if it was a large bird, you would hear multiple impacts, because it's multiple parts hitting at different rates of velocity, like head first and then the wings and then the body. But it was just one singular sound. And then I would think you would hear something of any significant density falling onto the ground and making a subsequent noise. And that there was just none of that.
Yeah, yeah, I would tend to agree. Katie, I feel like you have more information to share. Do you have any encounters? Did you ever see them? Do you have a history with this activity?
Um, well, one more thing I just forgot. I mean, I just remembered that I forgot. During this time, I realized that the resident deer herd had disappeared and that the squirrels that were, oh my gosh, they were all over my yard, were almost gone. So now thinking back, I lived in Northern California for a little while and I did some work in the woods. Well, they're not woods, they're wilderness. And honestly, I didn't believe back then, and I wasn't expecting to see anything. And I just chalked up. I went for a hike with my then dog and smelled something really horrible. Like I thought it was a kill site. And I continued my hike. And when I came back, the smell was gone. And I thought, wow, that must have been a bear that didn't like me going by this trail and dragged it away. So that just sort of, that's not what if I was to be honest with myself, that's not what bears do. They don't drag it away because it'll fall apart. They'll stay in the area and come and go from the kill site. So I don't know what that was.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. And you say your dogs were acting funny whenever you would take them outside and you could smell the skunky smell?
Yeah. Yes, it was just my one dog, the border collie. He's sharp as a whip. And, and like I had mentioned before, I pay a lot of attention to dogs' body language. They tell us so much more than a lot of people realize. If only they would tune into their dogs and believe their dogs. Dogs don't lie. I have a lot of dog training experience in the past, and I'm here to tell you that dogs do not lie.
Yeah.
So, seeing this strange behavior I never saw before with my border collie uh, got my wind up, so to speak. And I'm grateful. The next morning, he validated that I had some kind of reason to believe that some living being was on the other side of that tree. Like he did that two or three maybe mornings in a row.
Yeah.
So people might want to pay attention to their dogs after they have a night of craziness or strangeness. Follow your dog and see what they smell, what they do, and where they might pee and poop that would be different from their usual pattern.
Yeah, I would agree. And it seems like border collies, blue heelers, German shepherds are really in tune with their surroundings and they're able to pick up on this type of phenomenon very well.
Yeah, I was really amazed to find that out recently. I didn't have any preconceived notions when I was here in Ohio. I didn't know anything about the orbs, and I didn't know I really just didn't pay attention to Bigfoot stories. I actually would study bees. I have a beehive, and so I would leave it on and I would do work, my housework and stuff around, have the TV on in the background, and I don't know how, but it would segue over to one channel and then another and another, and then boom, up came Bigfoot with orbs. And that was when I had the aha moment that was sort of as confirmatory as I can get, I think, without seeing the physical being.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And What do you think this phenomenon means? What do you think is outside? Do you think it's Bigfoot?
I would have to say yes. I mean, I'm still fighting against myself to say, "Oh, it's Bigfoot," because of my training. I have to have that Bigfoot finger in a beaker. So, but um, I think it's as close as I can come right now, which is a huge step away from how I had traditionally thought. But I think that it's very likely. And well, okay, so I don't know if other people have this experience, but I had a couple of experiences that are sort of paranormal or what would match with the definition of that. When I had to euthanize my search and rescue dog, and later that night, um, it was 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and I was crying my eyes out, laying at the foot of my bed, and um, there's my dog. He looks at me from the doorway of my bedroom, and he's holding a red, puffy, furry, square toy that I never got him, ever. And he's looking happy. He's walking. He's not sick at all. And I sat up and I couldn't believe my eyes. And I said his name with incredulousness, and he walked over to where I was at the edge of my bed, and I reached over and I kind of thumped my hand on his abdomen like I always do, and I could touch him, and I heard the usual tympanic sounds of that kind of, hitting somebody over their abdomen. And then it was like someone turned a switch and I was out. And I was so relieved. It was such a gift. I totally believe that was real, that he came to say thank you for euthanizing me. It was hell to live in the body that I had. Uh, it's sort of goofy sounding. I know a lot of people just would turn their nose up to it, but that was the most comfort I had ever gotten in my life. And I don't know who gave him that toy, but apparently there's somebody or something somewhere that we don't know about that pay attention and gave him a toy that they knew he would like. And he brought that one toy to me to show me that other people are with him now, or things, I don't know what, and that he is having a grand old time.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that, and I appreciate you for sharing that information with me.
Thank you. It was, oh my God, it was beyond hard. He was such a protector for me out in the wilderness, and he and I had such a great working and friendship uh, relationship. It was just awesome, and to have to let him go was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And how recent was this activity that you were having? Is it still going on today?
With my former canine.
No, as far as the smells and
Oh,
what's going on outside the wood knocks.
no, no, I've been, now that I know what that smell is, and I think I might have mentioned to you that I have the scenting ability or the nose like a black bear. So I have been a little nervous when I go outside. So I go out first and I sniff the air. And if there's none of that smell, then I relax and let the dogs out. And so far, nothing. But uh, the neighborhood dogs, I've noticed, all have a pattern of barking at a certain time each evening after full dark. And that's not when I'm out. But so I don't know what that's all about. So I'm just keeping my nose open and my eyes open and when I detect that smell, I'll have to decide what to do after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't happen to live by Youngstown, Ohio, do you?
No, no, I'm by Lake Erie.
Okay. Okay, good. Um no,
Youngstown's a bad place, huh?
yeah, yeah, there's just other cryptids out there in Ohio, and it's just hard to say, if it's Bigfoot
Mhm.
or something else. I don't know if you believe in all that, but there's a lot of I don't want to freak you out, but there's a lot of dogman reports from that area.
It would be funny if I came across a dog man. I would probably say, sit, just go into my dog training. Probably wouldn't work out well for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And no, I mean, like, typically the dogs will bark at Sasquatch, but if they're too afraid to bark, it could be something to be worried about. And I'm not trying to worry you. I'm just saying it's good to be aware that there's other things out there other than Sasquatch, but most likely that's what it is. And anywhere that you're at in the United States, when people hear these howls, they refer to it as the Ohio howls or the Ohio man call. It's like a loud guttural yell. Sounds like kind of like a caveman. So there's a lot of Sasquatch reports from Ohio. That's for sure.
Well, I'm not opposed to keeping a peacemaker times three on my body, and I got that from back in my California days. So I don't really leave my house without some one or two different ways to defend myself because back when I was hiking in California, I would keep three different kinds of weapons on me at three different areas in case I was knocked over by a mountain lion or a bear. And most people feel safe just having one thing, and that's kind of a mistake because it's so easy to get separated from that. So I would suggest three different things.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. And most likely, if you had the activity, it'll return in the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting that. I've noticed that the deer, like I said, we have a resident herd, and over the winter you would expect them to get smaller, but this one got larger, and I haven't seen them. Now, I don't know, maybe they're giving birth. They're holed up giving birth somewhere right now, perhaps, but it's kind of strange that I haven't seen them.
Yeah, yeah, it could be because the phenomenon that's going on outside, or possibly because the hunting season and all the leaves being off the trees, they kind of disperse further into the woods. And as the foliage comes back, they'll come back around the house and, be having their little ones out around the property.
Okay. I don't really pay much attention, like I had mentioned before, but my yard is the most, oh, I've got the most trees, and I don't keep my house lights on at night. So I'm the one black hole in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And maybe that plays a part, but I had a magnificent buck in my backyard for 3 days, just lounging around, munching on weeds. So he's gone. I don't know whatever happened to him, but that's the kind of yard that I have. It attracts animals. So maybe if people don't want to push their luck, they should make sure that fox, squirrels, stuff, you don't feed the animals or provide den space or water or things like that for them.
Yeah, I agree. And what does the landscape look like around you? Is it pretty deep woods, farmland? Do you live around a
Uh,
bunch of people?
I feel okay. So I'm coming from a very sparsely populated place in California. So to me, it seems like a lot of people, but I think it would probably be graded as an average to a little bit less average populated suburban area. And there are plots of second growth trees still around, but, and there are a couple of parks that no one wants to go into because they used to be grape orchards and they're just horribly mucky and swampy. So those are really good areas for things to hide that don't want to be found.
Yeah.
But I'm about like 10 miles away from the lake, so the water table
Mm.
plays a part in my landscape here.
Yeah. And do you think the lake has something to do with the activity?
You know, I was just thinking about that, and in a way, yes, in so much as that is a whole bunch of acreage that no one can build on or change, kind of destroy. So we really only have 3 out of the 4 quadrants of a circle, and that might influence the concentration of things that want to spread out. They only have 75% versus 100. So it might concentrate life forms more in the remaining 3 quarters of a circle, so to speak. I'm kind of a physics and math geek.
Yeah. And throughout your life, even when you were younger, have you ever seen a UFO?
Well, now I don't know what it was, and it was at this house probably 3 years ago. I must say, I don't know. Um, it was a bright light above the horizon of the distant trees, really super bright, a circle. And it was just weird enough looking to catch my eye. And so as I watched it, it did not look like a plane. It had no strobe, it had no different colored lights, it wasn't moving. And then all of a sudden it shot straight up at a speed I could not fathom with my brain and was gone. So I told my daughter, and she said, "I believe you saw a UFO." It very well could be. That was inexplicable.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And with your scientific background, how has this activity, this phenomenon, changed your outlook on like God, the Bible, and all of that?
Um, it hasn't changed it at all.
Mhm.
I'm spiritual without being religious. I personally, without trying to offend anybody else's sentiments, I believe that there's a lot more to the story than what the Bible says. Not that I've read it, but I've heard enough about it. I think that there are so many more layers, and so many there's like if you take a scrunched up piece of paper and try to compute its surface area, it looks like this much. But if you were to straighten it back out flat, it would be this much. And I feel like we're closer to that scrunched up ball yet.
Yeah, yeah, I would tend to agree. And it seems like there's a lot of mysteries that have not been revealed to mankind, and we're
Yeah.
just barely touching the surface.
Yeah. And it's hard for anybody else to believe what I've said or anybody else has said. It's also comforting to know that it was me that experienced these things. So I'm not questioning anybody else. And I know what I saw.
Yeah, I believe you 110%. And
Thank you.
yeah, do you think that this is a good thing or a bad thing, what you experienced?
It has, it gave me an initial kind of burst of fear, but then a burst of pleasant curiosity and uh, anticipation for what's to follow. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. I think that, let's just say Bigfoot definitely does exist. And these individuals are out there suffering because of human ignorance, then that needs to stop.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how do we go about categorizing this down to a scientific level? And how do we go about researching it? What are your thoughts and theories about that?
Okay. Well, I know very little about it, but one thing I think that I had recently heard was infrasound. Am I on the is that a correct word for Bigfoot stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking that all these people that go out and smack trees with piece of wood,
Mhm.
our ears are definitely limited to our perception. Our brains can only hear a certain range. And if there is infrasound, then the Bigfoot making that same gesture is going to have so much more force. There's going to be more sounds to it that we can't hear at all. So I think personally that people should stop trying to call out with their voices or hit with sticks to try to mimic, 'cause I don't think that it's mimicable. And my first formal training was in music, so I've got I don't know, a little bit more exposure to that kind of stuff, that kind of theory and stuff.
Yeah, that very well could be. And with like bats, for example, they use echolocation and they're able to target bugs that are flying around. And we can't hear that, but they can. And a good way to
Yeah.
test this, which people shouldn't test it, is if you throw a rock up in the air when you're seeing bats, they'll target that
Mm.
rock and they can hear that whizzing through the air. We can't hear that rock flying through the air, but they can hear it and they'll fly right towards that rock. And, you
Right,
shouldn't do that
right,
because they'll run right into it. They'll try to eat it.
right.
But
There's so many more mechanisms that we don't even know about that exist that we think in our superiority complex that doesn't exist.
mhm. Yeah,
So we
absolutely.
don't even consider that, like the echolocation, phenomenal ability.
Mhm.
And the elephants hearing through their feet and their ears, I can't even imagine what they hear.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than just simply going out with a stick or a baseball bat and smacking it up against a tree.
Yeah, and people think, it's crazy that the Sasquatch know what you're thinking or what you're doing, but people don't understand the abilities that creatures have on this planet, especially something that's unknown. And you can test this by using a dog whistle. We can't hear it, but it
Yeah,
affects the canines.
absolutely a great example. And then those dogs that can detect the approach of an epileptic seizure, how do they do that?
Yeah, that's
But they're
true.
trained to do that.
Yeah, I've even heard of people using dogs like at hospitals and they're able to detect people that have cancer 2 weeks before like anything
Yeah,
that they have can detect that.
exactly. Yeah. There's just so much more that we do not know. And I don't think that there's any currently available ways to detect that or study it or reproduce it.
Yeah.
The biggie in science is to have reproducible evidence. If
Mm.
you can't reproduce it somewhere else, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's true. And what I heard about the canines at the hospital is that they're able to smell chemical changes in our bloodstream and they can detect that before the technology can.
Yes. And not to be too gross, but when a person or a body dies, I believe it's within 1 to 2 minutes, those certain flies can already detect in the wind, moving air, where that is. It's already a change that's emitted.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. And it seems like animals can communicate by scent. And we're constantly like losing skin cells or, flakes of skin, and
Yes.
they can smell that from
Yeah.
miles away.
Yeah. And for a long time, it's surprising, very surprising. My dog out in California made a believer out of a park ranger who did not believe that dogs could find people upon command. And she she had to, I don't mean to say that she had to eat her words, but my dog led us down a path. It was a logging road with woods all around, and it was full night. And I gave him the scent that I wanted him to look for, gave him the hand signal, and he took off down that road. And then all of a sudden, he did a 90-degree turn into the woods, and there was no visible reason to any of us as to why he selected that particular point. So in we follow him, and we keep going for about 10 minutes, and then he comes to the guy's hat and sits down and gives me his signal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
it's just,
impressive.
yeah, and she was like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah.
Now I called off the search because it was getting to be really bad territory, but there's a lot more senses that creatures around us have that we don't consider. And I think that humanity is very arrogant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're in 2024, and you constantly hear people say, with all the technology we have, why haven't we discovered Bigfoot? But if you look at all the technology that we have, for example, like at the border, in the military, people are bringing drugs across the border, smuggling things, and we have like these x-ray machines and all this technology, but they're still using German Shepherds to seek these things out over the technology.
Oh, yes. There was a dead body, sadly enough, again, a river guy that went into the river back in California, and they used ultrasound. They used all kinds of different devices, mechanical devices, for 3 days, looking for his body for his family. And it took 20 minutes for one of the water trained dogs to find his body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And with all that being said, it's difficult to say or gauge what the Sasquatch are truly capable of, and they may know things that may seem impossible, but for them, it's nothing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think that people should, I guess, just tone down, like throttle back on the arrogance that we have all the machinery that could ever be developed, or devices or measurements to detect things. It's so not true, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, and just don't over or underestimate anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything is possible.
Right.
Okay. Katie, what do you think the wood knocks meant whenever you walked outside with your dogs?
Oh, that's a good question that you asked. And I was thinking about it at different times afterwards. The first time I heard it, I thought maybe, perhaps I misunderstood, misheard it. Wasn't quite sure, but I, I, I couldn't misunderstand it. That's the normal first step a human takes, is to talk themselves out of what they just saw or heard. So the second one, uh, I realized, was directed at me. It was purposeful, and it was quicker and louder. And I wasn't sure. I felt torn between, it wanted me to notice it and come forward, or get out of my own front yard. So my dog was already out doing his crazy eight stuff. So I took one or two more steps to my very first step down, and then it gave the loudest and most rapid two knocks. And then I went back into my head thinking, okay, I'm afraid of two things, and it's not a mountain lion. Maybe it's a person. People are the scariest animals on this planet. So I uh, I went back. I called my dog in and started heading back in. And when I thought about it later, and thinking about, say, a toddler would do this repetitious activity to show heightened excitement of a good kind. Uh, so I am thinking that it was something to draw my attention, to draw me forward, And I didn't get any hairs standing up on my back of my neck or any sense of that sort that I've heard other people say. Um, I don't know what I would do if I heard it again. I think I would get my dog inside. And I think that the 98% of my concern was for my dog's safety. But my end opinion on that is that if it was like the hotter and colder game, and I was getting hot or like warmer, warmer, hot. But then I blew it and dropped the ball and went back inside.
Yeah. Yeah, that does make sense. And have you ever let the dogs go out on their own and you stayed inside?
Yeah, it was a while ago though. Then we got skunks, and so I had to go out with them. So that's been a couple of years. So I don't normally let them out now, and I don't think I would let them out. Well, okay, there's one time that recently this year that I went out to get the mail during the nighttime, and my border collie loves to, for some reason, charge into the back of my house, circle around, and come just flying like a missile towards me when I've got the mail in my hand. Because I guess maybe I might have whacked him with it once or twice and it became a brand new game. So he would always do that. Only recently, at one time, he was gone longer and then he came back the way that he went into. And he never did that before or since. So after night falls, I just give him a command to stay with me instead of going out in the backyard. I don't know what made him veer away from his most favorite game of the night.
Yeah. You'll have to keep them close and keep an eye on them, make sure they don't run off out into the woods.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Katie, do you have any questions for me? Else you want to mention or talk about?
Um, have you, in your experience, heard any surmises about, like, well, I guess, why do these beings smack houses? Is it to scare or to draw out for fun? Any kind of direction on that?
Yeah, it could be intimidation. They could be trying to draw you out into the yard, or they're just letting you know that they're aware of exactly where you're at inside the house and they're just trying to show their intelligence to you.
Yeah, that I could believe that for sure because of how incredibly accurate it was to where my head was, which leads to a whole new chapter of, wow, that's uncomfortable. So are they just able to somehow detect through walls?
Yeah, and this goes back to the echolocation, and they know when you're walking around your house, and they know when you're asleep, and that might correlate with them looking through windows at nighttime, or when somebody's sleeping in their tent. They know exactly when they're asleep. They can hear you snoring or breathing differently from in the woods, and that's when they come up and approach people, and that's why people are unable to get close to them.
Hmm. Well, getting into their heads, then if they were wanting to be friendly, then that would be a bad choice on their part because that would be at the height of any human's fear reaction. Now, you don't go sneaking up on them when they're sleeping and go, "Hey, I'm here."
Yeah, I'm not
So
sure why they
it's
do
just,
that, but it
yeah,
just seems like they're aware of everything around them.
yeah, it does. We don't really have any way to put a fence around this whole thing yet, so that should make everybody just aware, kind of on their knuckles, so to speak.
Yeah, and in the neighborhood, is there anybody that has like a Bigfoot cutout, any Bigfoot signs, anything like that?
No, not around here. I really doubt that anyone would advertise that sort of thing around here because of the dominating political atmosphere.
Yeah,
So I just doubt it.
Yeah, around
People.
here, people that I know who have had encounters, they put up those cutouts in their yards. And when I'm driving through
Oh,
different areas, I see cutouts and I wonder to myself, I wonder if they've had activity, if they've seen one before.
yeah, that definitely would be something I would think of if they put that out. Like I have a bee welcome mat. So, I've got bees. And if people put a big or a Sasquatch welcome mat, well, makes you wonder.
Have you ever noticed them getting into the little beehives that you got?
Not at all.
Mm.
And I thought about that too. And it was kind of surprising. They're smart enough to figure out how to open this hive. It's a little bit more of a complicated hive, but they haven't. And made me wonder why. Assuming that they're out there, they must like sweets if they're a mammal. And they can't possibly be bothered by stings, even by a whole hive. Maybe they can. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to
But
say.
well, here's an interesting thing about bumblebee. I mean, not bumblebees, but honeybees, especially. They hone in on carbon dioxide. So a bear is their biggest enemy, and a bear is huffing and puffing, blowing out this CO2, and bees are drawn towards that to start stinging. So if anybody is caught in a honeybee swarm, hold your breath.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I believe the Sasquatch clans, they work together for the benefit of the group, and they have a sort of hive mind, kind of like Dobermans. Like when one's in danger, they all kind of know it, or if one's up to something, they can all hone in on whatever's going on.
Yeah, and kind of like bees, if one stings, the act of the stinging releases a pheromone, and that is just kind of crop dusted over the hive. And then they're all up in arms. So I wonder if that kind of thing happens with other life forms. I know that trees can do that now. So for Pete's sake, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, that very well could be. Maybe if a Sasquatch is onto like a deer, or if he's in danger, like he can release a pheromone, and the
Mm.
other Sasquatch can pick up on that.
Well, I know that humans release a fear pheromone, which is now used in dog training. Instead of using actual human parts, for the police department, anyhow, they can use this fear pheromone to train their dogs to know who to attack. The one that's afraid is then that's really interesting to me too.
Yeah, that is interesting. So you're saying like if somebody's guilty, they're releasing like fear. If they're up to something, the dogs can pick up on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they absolutely can. And it's hard to get a volunteer to genuinely become afraid. So they have manufactured a fear hormone. So one could always question how accurate that is, but I think it's pretty accurate. So if there's a suspect running down the street and they jump into a house somewhere and the police let their Malinois out, that dog has been trained on a fear pheromone versus a human pheromone of any sort so that they can differentiate who to go to and who not to.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think when law enforcement's around, it's natural to be fearful, even if you're
Yeah,
innocent.
I know. A bunch of people could get bit before they get the right one.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Let's see. Any more questions? Do you have anything else that you'd like to talk about? You have some pretty good
I
points
don't
and
think so.
topics that you've brought up, so keep them coming if you got
Well,
them.
yeah, I can't think of anything else. And it was really, really nice to be able to talk openly with you. As I had mentioned, I haven't talked about this with anybody else, and I doubt I ever will.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for opening up and talking with me about it. And don't second guess yourself. You did an excellent job at relating the activity, and everything you talked about made sense. So
Oh,
you
good.
you did really good.
Oh, good. I guess everyone should just pay attention to their gut feeling. It's got some wisdom in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still learning that today, that I need to pay more attention to my gut and my instincts. And, it always guides you to the right place.
Yeah, it does. Every single survivor that we've ever found in the wilderness said that they disregarded their gut.
Yeah. And people that find themselves in bad situations, they didn't listen to their gut.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And don't pay attention to the dog's reaction to the person. That's like a new date that comes to your house and the dog doesn't like them. It's not that the dog doesn't like them. It's that you don't know that you don't like them, but the dog picks up that you don't like them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I've noticed that anywhere I go, dogs love me. Like they just want to like lay on me and they want to be around me the whole
Oh,
time.
oh, that's wonderful, isn't it? I have that too, where strange dogs will want to just come up to me and their owners be like, that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens to me all the time. And the owners always tell me, I know that someone's not a good person because if my dog's growling at them, I never have them come back here again.
Right, right. But they always assume that it's the dog. They discount themselves and they just assume that the dog has this special gift of figuring that out. Now,
Hmm.
maybe some do, but the majority of the time, we are so trained by society to discount ourselves and pay attention to the whatever entity rules us, you know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's
thing I
absolutely
don't,
true.
but yeah.
Okay.
So it
Well,
was wonderful to talk with you.
yeah, it was wonderful talking with you as well. And if you have more experiences, feel free to reach back out to me. And
Okay.
yeah, just keep your head on a swivel. Make sure that you pay attention to your surroundings. And yeah, it was excellent speaking with you today.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Take care, and I will definitely call you if something else happens.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good to me. And you have yourself an excellent night. And I hope to talk with you again in the future.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Talk to you later.
All right. Take care, Katie.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. All right, Katie, thank you very much for sharing your Bigfoot experiences with all of us here on the channel. And I really have a lot of respect for your scientific outlook on the phenomenon. And I have respect for anybody, whatever they believe, whether it's something spiritual or if you think it's a caveman or whatever it may be. I respect that. And nobody really knows. So we're all here on the same page, on the same team, and we're all trying to figure this out together. Even if you do lay eyes on a Bigfoot creature, it's still going to lead to more questions and you're always going to be seeking answers. I just hope one day somebody comes up with a solid answer and we at least have an idea of what's going on out there. Whenever I first started this channel, I figured eventually I'm going to run into somebody that really knows what's going on with this phenomenon. But it seems like everyone's on the same page and no one really knows, so it's pretty mysterious. I'm sure somebody out there does, and hopefully they speak up one day here in the future. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. I really do appreciate every single one of you for watching, and you guys take care, be safe, and until the next one.